floated away in the storm surge. If I walk over here, you'll also notice just, a side wall of this hospital where we're located, just laying here sideways. The Hard Rock Hotel was supposed to open this weekend. That's not going to happen. A brand new hotel, of course, the livelihood of many people here in Biloxi based on the casinos, and most people, of course, not worried about getting back to work, but of course just making sure that everyone is okay and that they're getting the food and they're getting the water. And that has been the positive thing that we have seen. We have seen those convoys coming in and out as we head back inland into our location where our hotel is. Every night you look down the interstate and you just see sirens and everything just lining up and crews going through. So certainly some good news there, but water and food is of utmost importance right now. People, I think, have put aside, all right, we've lost our stuff, it's tragic, it's horrific, but let's keep ourselves alive. And it's still that kind of situation here where
Biloxi,
it comes.
As time goes on, I would imagine that the home video that you're looking at, that you should be looking at, will be surfacing. We'll be seeing more of this. We heard a story about a man, a 78-year-old man, near our live shot location who rode the boat called Luna Sea. Was that right, Mel? The Luna Sea. And he apparently rode that in, didn't mean to, thought this guy was safe. He rode that thing on in his boat with him and his two dogs and ended up a good couple of 100 yards at least inland. Wasn't good at all. That man survived that storm, survived the ride in here, and was picked up by his son a couple of days ago. But some of the local media here had been feeding him some sandwiches and giving him water. But he made it through. Now I want to talk to you about a small town that we passed through yesterday, Pas Christian. Nice little town, but it got hit right dead center by Katrina as well. Those folks, a lot of them did evacuate. A lot of them heeded the warnings of local officials and left, but there were a whole slew of people also that decided they weren't going to leave at this time. They remember Dennis. They remember boarding up as fast as they could, and they tell us all for naught. So they decided at this point, when they heard that Katrina was coming through, they didn't think that it was going to be as big of a monster as she was. They decided to stay, and obviously we went through there, and we saw some people that were still sitting up on the second floor of their home. One guy telling us that indeed he thought that his whole world was going to end. He thought for sure, he swore to God, he was going to die. He heard the wind blowing, he heard cars smashing into his house, and it wasn't long, he said, before he was up as high as he could be in the attic of his home, and that's where he found his safety. Coming back out here live, guys, right now, let me tell you this much. We are in Harrison County. This is where Biloxi, Mississippi is. We know right now that they have about 100 ambulances on the way on top of what they've already got. 2,500 porta-johns. Important. This place is starting to smell. People are using the bathroom wherever they can. That may not sound nice, but that's just the bottom line. Also, we understand this much, that they are creating water points. They hope to have drive-through distribution points set up sometime today. We were looking at some paperwork. They have at least 30 or so distribution points they're hoping to set up soon. Greg?
We were talking about hundreds of vehicles, SUVs, school buses, probably from all over the country. There were some fire trucks from as far away as Los Angeles, some government vehicles, obviously military vehicles, but also just all the good souls in this country pitching in. Greg Kelly, we thank you very much. Let's go back to Phil Keating in New Orleans. And Phil, I'm hoping to hear from you that that convoy is still wending its way into the city.
Yeah, it's going into staging areas as well as distribution areas. We presume a lot of it's going to be right around the New Orleans Convention Center. That's out of sight for us right where we are right now. But that was the master plan. FEMA coordinating this effort 4 days after the hurricane. This is what the refugees that have been waiting for some food, water relief, and a bus to get a ride out of town on have been waiting for in big force. In dramatic numbers, an 8-mile-long convoy crossing the Crescent City connection bridges, the twin-span bridges connecting New Orleans to Jefferson Parish on the west over the Mississippi River.
On the outskirts of New Orleans. Now, when we last spoke with Greg Kelly, our White House guy, he said that there were no plans for the president to actually walk around New Orleans. It would just be a security logistical nightmare. So no plans for him to disembark, if you will. But the president, we've certainly been seeing a lot of him over the past couple of days. He spoke this morning before he left on his trip to Mobile, Alabama. He spoke at the White House as he was leaving, and then didn't know it was going to happen. But we were able to get that live look of inside the hangar there at Mobile, Alabama, and hear the president get that briefing from other officials.
He says if it's not going doing exactly right. We are going to make it right. The words from the president a short time ago. Another thing that struck me, listening earlier to the briefing he was giving, I think it was a Coast Guard pilot who operates these helicopters at night. He described the flying at night as they look for flashlights on the ground. And when they see a flashlight, they'll drop down, and most of the time they will find a family of 4 or 5 waiting to be rescued, and that's what the Coast Guard's been doing now for 4 days.
In good shape.
Right.
I mean, our water supply, food is coming in, and that aspect of the dehydration we are not seeing right now. All the kids, there's one pediatrician that is coming from one of the local hospitals only to see the children, so they're being monitored quite well. And of course, their children, they just have not, they have no idea yet of the impact, of the mental impact, which when you compare the mental impact of this disaster to the adults, I mean, a lot of displaced families, I have been talking to a lot of folks, and they just don't know where their loved ones are. There's no central communication. Some families have been displaced, perhaps to different shelters, or perhaps they have been lost, and that's creating a mental health impact also in this community.
Right, something that we haven't even begun to talk about. Dr. Alvarez, stick around with me just for a moment. I want to bring Bill Hemmer back into our coverage here of the president's walking tour in Biloxi, Mississippi.
You know, we talked about the help on the way, Gretchen. We talked about this convoy, talked about the military rolling into New Orleans and the president's trip down there today, the money that is now expected to come out of Congress later today. We're also seeing on the left side of our screen here, rescues continue at this hour. This is a helicopter airlift right near I-10 on the east side of New Orleans. Apparently these people were bused to this location. They're now being ferried to the local airport, where then they'll be taking out of the way up to northwestern part of the state toward Baton Rouge, where they will get shelter and they'll get some help and some aid and some medication, and also hopefully some air conditioning too to fight these hot temperatures here. On the right, this could be this mother and daughter I described. Let's listen here.
Neighbors, the water was like so high, so they don't know what they should do.
It's just there's no center there. So
There's nothing.
We go to the school. There's a school about 2 miles away. It's the middle school and the high school.
But in there, Salvation Center?
So it's quite out. That's why you're here. Oh, so they got the truck that feeds food.
That's not fancy. Food and water.
Oh yeah. We're getting it slowly, but in New Orleans, I heard it's rough. Man. My father was so proud of me talking to me. He loved me. He's watching me in Florida right now. No, sir.
Just down here. They're being
This is the mother and daughter that I described earlier a few moments ago, who told the president they don't have anything, and they need clothes, and they need water, and they need food. You saw the governor there, Haley Barbour, behind him. That's Mike Brown in a white shirt, the FEMA director, Federal Emergency Management Agency, who the president gave strong kudos to about 2 hours ago in Mobile, Alabama, saying they've been working 24 hours around the clock. You also saw the mayor in Biloxi, Mississippi there, too. And look at that devastation. There's a senator from Mississippi on the name of Thad Cochran. He was quoted yesterday as saying that whole coastal area of the state has been destroyed, virtually destroyed, his words. And then he continued with this. It was quiet, it was eerie, it was horrible to behold. That's the senator from Mississippi. Gretchen.
And what's so compelling when you see these pictures, Bill, is that the mother and daughter here are just a microcosm of the thousands of people that have been affected throughout this whole Gulf Coast region. To hear them say that they have the clothes only on their backs, it makes us come back to the pictures in New Orleans as well of people who have not had food, water, the basic necessities of life. And we were speaking earlier to Dr. Manny Alvarez, who said that the mental impact of this travesty will be to come in the future. One can only imagine first that we think about survival, and then we move on to the fact that we have no belongings and no clothing and no goods, and then to move on to What will happen to these people as a result of all this happening to them psychologically? And we're seeing there the president taking in the compassion today and speaking to this mother and daughter in Biloxi, Mississippi. We now have live pictures back. I believe, is this New Orleans? Is this trying to prepare for the levee break
on the
in New
Orleans?
Orleans?
Look at the density and the thickness of those clouds, Jackie. It's kind of a spectacular view of what was at the time a Category 5 storm. You got to remember that it did weaken just a bit before it made landfall, even though it didn't weaken enough to spare life and help the folks out there much. Wow, look at those feeder bands. Look at how thick and puffy that thing looks, Jackie, as it was rolling its way towards the Gulf Coast. All right, let's go ahead and talk about our big scattered showers that are happening right now.
Police officers telling me more gunshots again, not as intense as the previous 3 nights of the blackout, but thanks to those National Guard and active duty military presence, troops down there, well, it certainly became a little more safe, but clearly there was still a large way to go to get law and order restored to downtown New Orleans. Take a look at what's going on behind me, this right here. More school buses, more buses coming in here. These would be on the way to the convention center, the scene of so much of that lawlessness and crime over this past week. Every night the refugees telling me that inside there it was either no power, no lighting at all whatsoever for many generators, to anybody who had a gun was pretty much doing whatever they wanted, with people dying, people getting raped. But the National Guard, the active duty army, many with Iraq war experience, descending en masse yesterday, and we have seen another massive increase in their numbers here today. We're expecting about 2,000 to 4,000 more troops here on the ground by the end of today. And President Bush this morning from the Rose Garden announcing 7,000 active duty troops have been activated from the Department of Defense. They will be in this region, the 3-state Hurricane Katrina affected region of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Of course, most of those troops will be descending on New Orleans, which has been a city, a natural disaster, and an urban crisis of unprecedented proportions. Now, down the street from where we are, down Business 90, you can see on the road early this morning, despite all of the bus evacuations, still, once again, overnight, hundreds and hundreds of refugees camping out on the concrete, sleeping, hoping that perhaps anytime now the buses would be coming. And we went down there earlier this morning, little kids, elderly, a lot of families, just telling us that busload after busload convoys going by empty, picking up people from other parts of the town. But obviously, as this FEMA coordinated operation really ramps up again today, perhaps those people will be finally getting their bus ride out. But the frustration after 5 days since the hurricane, 5 days since being stranded from their homes, evacuated for safety, well, here's what one woman told us, how she described the absolute frustration.
It's unbelievable. It's like a dream, a bad dream. That's what it feels like.
Do you feel like a refugee in your own?
Yes, this is how I feel, like a refugee. And I know how those people felt. Because that's just how we feel. And it's a shame.
What you're looking at live right now, this is a new fire burning in downtown New Orleans. We presume these are all arson fires. That's the word we get from the New Orleans Police Department. The big oil storage facility fire that erupted yesterday morning and still smoldering over there across the river. You really can't even see the smoke right now. But this brand new fire, so there's 2 fires I can personally see smoke from actively coming this way. Coming down the ramp here below me, we have some more vehicles, some more National Guard deuce and a halves. The massive evacuation operation getting more intense, more ramped up here today. So the help is coming, but the frustration and the patience wearing thin. And you see all those people getting on those buses from our multiple cameras all over New Orleans today. You can see the happiness and the relief that finally their nightmare is about to end. But the fatigue is so evident. Back to you in New York.
Phil, thanks. I want to be clear on a couple of things. Through a lot of Phil's report, you've been seeing some new video we've been getting from the convention center, which is not far from his location. And what we've seen in the last few hours this morning is the airlift of many of the people at the convention center to sites outside of the city. Joining me now on the phone with an update on how law and order is being restored in New Orleans is Sergeant Kathy Flincham of the Louisiana State Police. Kathy, I want to start with the situation first at the Superdome. How many people are left, and how would you describe the condition there?
Well, we're now seeing calm and order return to the city. We have a report, probably around 2,000 folks are still left there. We are still conducting evacuations. We have the buses rolling, especially there the New Orleans Convention Center. We have a considerable increase in military and police presence in the city. So, and I also want to tell your viewers that there's been an outpouring of support from law enforcement officials all around the country, and just to tell them thank you so much for all the help that they're offering and sending.
I was told yesterday in a conference call with Homeland Security that we would see a big influx, and we have in the last 24 hours, of National Guard and active military into your area. What kind of difference has that made? Oh, it's made a tremendous difference for us, and also as the water recedes, we're able to access more areas and patrol more areas, and you know, I want to tell you that despite the personal hardships endured by all the first responders, these dedicated men and women continue to save lives and give aid and comfort to the hurricane victims and get them out of harm's way.
We're going into the convention center, ironically a place that I've often come to celebrate various television programs. You look around, there's people everywhere in the most miserable conditions you could possibly imagine. You come in, excuse me. Okay. There were garbage people, babies, people who've staked out their turf. All these people, just think of this, not only have to eat and sleep, but they have to go to the bathroom. There's no hygiene. There's nothing here. Shaw, baby. Shaw, baby. Shaw. Shaw, baby. Mom, you have no milk, Mom? She's hungry. Baby's hungry. Good luck. I'll never forget it. I hope I'll never ever see it again. I never thought I'd see it in my country. Thank God those scenes now part of history, recent history, Sean, but at least it's in the past now. Now we're all on the same page. They knew they had to empty this place. They have finally done so. Now the challenge, though, I was saying before we went to the inside of the convention center from last night, is that poorest, most vulnerable, many of them very aged. New Orleans has an incredible concentration of old folks here because of the very warm climate. Very young people, many of them with subsistence jobs. Now they have nothing. Whatever they had was in their homes. Their homes now they have nothing to go back. The homes are underwater. Now the French Quarter, that's okay. That was what they called the uptown, the side of the town that was built nearer the Mississippi in the 17th and 18th century. But then when you go into the downtown, it goes sloping right down toward Lake Pontchartrain. All those buildings now are under between 10 and 20 feet, not of water. Everyone says water. It's not water. It's a toxic cesspool. It is sewage, chemicals from all of the chemical plants along the river and elsewhere, all of the industrial waste. It is that black, mucky stuff. If you live in the suburbs and you still have an old-fashioned cesspool and you take the cover off the cesspool, that is what has submerged the Crescent City. That is what New Orleans is under. And how these people, it's not a question of rebuilding. It's a question, Sean, of absolutely restarting. And how they do it, I don't think they can without the help of all of us, Sean.
All right, Geraldo Rivera, we're going to be going back to him, of course, throughout the next 2 hours on the air. We've certainly turned the corner on the short-term problems.
But as California, this is the first sign of that help coming in from the ocean side with these hovercraft. And there you can watch them as they end up going right up onto the shore. And as you can imagine, this is with so many roads and highways gone.
This is one of the first flights to arrive in Phoenix, Arizona, with displaced citizens from the Gulf Coast who are going to be headed to the Veterans Memorial Stadium set up with 1,000 cots for victims of Hurricane Katrina. Stay with us for our continuing coverage. We'll be back after the break.
Girlfriend and mother to tell him he was okay. He says if someone comes to his door wearing a badge, he'll come out peacefully. But others say others say there's no way, that they're not going to come out peacefully. They're going to fight to stay in their homes. They don't want their homes looted, that there's not enough security here. Now, now it becomes a question whether or not this is actually going to go through. First of all, I'm going to show you this neighborhood. There's two thought processes to this. We haven't yet got the exact area they're going to start, but this could be one down here. This is one of the troubled areas they had with some gunfire earlier on when their searches were taking place. It is one of the shallower neighborhoods in the distance, and so the thought process could be, because we've heard this from some of the officers that said they would go in, is that a shallower neighborhood is easier to get to first. Of course, the deeper the neighborhood gets, the easier, the more you have to use a boat, more difficult, of course, to get somebody out. We don't yet know exact neighborhoods, but there's a couple things, too, we have to take into account. First of all, the military has said they will not help in this procedure, and they're not here to do law enforcement. Other officers I've spoken with, including yesterday, have told me, Bridget, that they're not going to try to move these people out because there is more important things to do in their minds, and they question the way that things have been led thus far from above. So it's interesting to see, one, if New Orleans police officers who are doing a pretty good job here, the ones that remained on the job, one is to see if they'll do this, if they'll go into these homes and try to force these people out. And secondly, is to see if the military will be involved, because the military said they won't be. I want to show you this side, too, as well. This kind of gives you a perspective also. This neighborhood over here is another neighborhood where we were told, we're on the south side of it, really. We were told this neighborhood yesterday would have personnel going in and forcing people out. That came from the Coast Guard Special Forces Unit. That did not happen, even though the Coast Guard told us that. It did not happen yesterday. They obviously have waited for an extra day. We have seen a number of helicopters. I don't know if you can make them out in the distance over this neighborhood. We've seen a number of Blackhawks flying over in formation, very low over the tops of the homes, almost as if to make sure there was nobody else that wanted to come out voluntarily, or there was nobody else who had been trapped who somehow used an axe, like we heard from our guest last hour, and somehow maybe have gotten out onto the roof. They're doing that now. You can, if they're going to go in, you could probably be assured that once that flyover has been completed, you're going to start to see officers go into some of these areas. Bridget?
Adam, how about the water? I know, there was some encouragement yesterday that the waters were receding, but from what I understand, not a lot of the pumps are working.
Right. In fact, there's only 5 pumps out of 148 that are working. I'm told that if all the pumps were working at one time, they're actually too much. It'd be pumping out too much water because it would cause the system to shut down. I was told that by one of the guys who runs the pumps. But still, 5 isn't enough. 5 out of 148. In fact, real quick before we give it back to you, if you look at this van, it's the best way of telling how much the water has dropped here. We're about 4 miles or so from where the breach is, or took place. Of course, that's been plugged. We're about 3 miles from downtown, so we're kind of in the middle. And you can see the water's dropped about 2 feet here, but you can also tell there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, there sure is. All right, Adam Housley, we'll be checking back a lot, of course, through the day. Adam, thanks a lot. And just wanted to pass this along to you about the Army National Guard. We're getting information that some of the members of the Guard continue to help out the people who've been affected by Hurricane Katrina. We understand that some soldiers from the Louisiana National Guard's 256th Brigade Combat Team deployed to Iraq are now planning on coming back home, going from a war zone really to a very different kind of rescue and recovery operation there in New Orleans. All right. Well, in Mississippi, close to 200 bodies have been recovered in the aftermath of Katrina, but as workers clear through the wreckage and find more, officials say that body count could reach more than 1,000. Fox's Rick Leventhal spent yesterday with the general who's in charge of the military efforts in that state.
And Shepard, the water level in New Orleans is dropping, and this is a big reason why. The pump's finally coming back online, this one pushing some 30,000 gallons per minute. That is enough to fill up a backyard swimming pool every minute, but in this case scenario, it is a drop in the bucket. The good news, there are 3 more pumps this size up and down the canals, and now authorities telling us the pumps they call the Big Daddy starting to come back online, able to push 1 million gallons per minute. But engineers say you have to bring these things back online slowly because they don't know how strong the levees are. The problem happened in the first place when you had all the water rushing in from Katrina. That's when the levees broke. And on the flip side, they don't want to push millions and millions of gallons out, and that could also breach the levees. Now, you're looking at the other side of the 17th Street Canal. Those are the houses. Those are the worst-case scenario houses. The water level has dropped, but not dropping fast enough for the residents there. They are hoping to get those houses dry in 30 to 80 days. You can hear Black Hawk helicopters in the background. They are not fixing the breach any longer in the 17th Street Canal. They are now moving on, dropping sandbags in the London Canal. They will drop those sandbags for the next couple of days. They hope to fix that breach in the London Canal in the next couple of days. We're coming back here live, Shep. They are also having a lot of debris problems in these pumps. The debris gets caught in the fences, in the nets. They've got to go down there and they've got to sweep them away, shutting down the pumps. It slows the process, but for the time being, the pumps are on and the water in New Orleans finally starting to drop. Shep.
Very, very good news. Trace Gallagher live 60 miles west of us in the city of New Orleans, and it now appears that illnesses born from contaminated water have claimed their first victims. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta saying as many as 5 people have died of bacterial infections caused by a waterborne pathogen. The CDC says it is commonly found in water off the Gulf of Mexico, and that there was 1 confirmed death in Texas, the other 4 here in Mississippi. The Environmental Protection Agency saying the bacteria is in the water, and it is 10 times the acceptable level for humans, filled with sewage, bacteria, high lead levels. The EPA now urging people to avoid the water in all costs. Well, here in Waveland, Mississippi, we're learning that New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin calls him a John Wayne dude who can get things done. He's the Lieutenant General Russell Honor, the top military commander in the hurricane relief effort. Honor Ray, that is. His job, coordinate the massive humanitarian mission and make sure it runs as smoothly as possible. Our crew spent the day with him to see how that's happening. Rick Leventhal live here in Waveland. Rick.
Shep, General Honore is from Louisiana, and he speaks in colorful language. He says things like, you're looking at the calendar, I'm looking at my watch. He's driven to get things done, and if he's assigned a mission, he wants to complete that mission as quickly as possible. And his mission this time around is to help the people, to carry out search and rescue missions, to get food, water, and medicine to people who need it, and to recover the dead as quickly as possible. We spent about 16 hours with the General yesterday, flying all across the state in a Black Hawk helicopter. The General, 3 stars, now in charge of Task Force Katrina. He spends about every day flying from place to place in Mississippi and Louisiana, meeting with police chiefs and governors and emergency operations officials and others doing the hard work on the ground. He says nobody should be pointing fingers here, especially because this storm was of biblical proportions.
The first responders became victims right up front. And generally speaking, your first responders, you expect them to be able to respond.
Right.
But the storm was so devastating, and the impact of the flooding, on taking down the ability to maneuver.
So they themselves were trapped in many cases.
Right, and severely affected because some of them, their families, had become victims.
The General says don't get stuck on stupid, meaning don't spend time worrying about what might have gone wrong, start fixing things, and move forward, Shep.
Rick Leventhal live here tonight in Waveland, Mississippi. Rick, thanks very much. The news continues now as we continue to watch all over the Gulf Coast of Mississippi and in the bayous of Louisiana. In parts of Mississippi, the power is back on and tanker trucks can operate. The gas shortages are now easing here, but for many areas, finding fuel is a daily, unending struggle. One woman saying she waited in line for 7 hours to buy a 5-gallon container of gas, and she paid $5 a gallon for it. Another resident with a message for the president and the governor, quoting, "We've got plenty of people bringing us food and water, but we can't do anything without gas." Katrina survivors getting a new way to pay for gas and other supplies. The feds planning to give them debit cards worth $2,000. The Red Cross is already handing out similar cards that the Homeland Security Department is still working out the details. But it says the plan is to start with the Astrodome with families who are most in need. And that's been much of the talk here across South Mississippi today. When will those cards be coming to us? The president today asking Congress for almost $50 billion in additional aid relief for this effort. This as the GOP leadership on the Hill announces plans to put together a bipartisan committee of senior lawmakers from both houses of Congress. The goal here, find out what went wrong at every level of government.
Appreciate how utterly destroyed their beloved city is, those that are from New Orleans, and just how foul the conditions are that they're going to be going into.
I think, frankly, if you ask them that question, if it's set in yet, they'll say no. I think, by and large, they're still stunned and they are still shocked. And I think the work they're doing, Greg, is very important because the work keeps their mind off their homes and their families and enables them to do their job. I tell you, I flew over New Orleans several hours ago. I gotta tell you, Greg, it's one thing to watch it on TV. It's an entirely different matter to see it in person. When you can literally hover over this city, washed in water, 500 feet below you, and smell these open gas lines and see the gas bubble to the surface everywhere you look. We flew over the levee, and that is still a monster job. And you can see a little bit of progress, Greg, day by day, but they've got a huge job still to try and just repair that one levee. Now, there's another levee across town. It's called the Industrial Canal. This is the area that empties into the 9th Ward. That's the very poor section of New Orleans where you saw a number of people on top of their homes this past week looking for help. There are two significant breaks in the levee that I could see from above that have not even been attended to just yet. At what point do they get to them, and at what point can they drop those water levels and carry out the very gruesome task of going house to house in these various neighborhoods in New Orleans? As we stand here today, I wish I could tell you that what they were telling us yesterday about turning the corner was true overall. It is true on the human side. When it comes to getting these people out of hospitals down there, out of the convention center, out of the Superdome. But now you're going to start to realize that this city has been literally destroyed. It is a ghost town from up above. It is eerie and it is lonely to fly over the city of New Orleans, Greg.
Bill, it's Paige. You were talking about the people on the rooftops, and of course there are some still there as we're looking at these pictures. A lot of these people are staying there. Many of us watch the footage of the emergency people asking them to come with them, asking them to get out of their houses. Is this because many of these people don't have TVs, they don't have telephones, they don't have radios, they're essentially in a vacuum and perhaps don't really understand the gravity of the situation?
You know, I heard something today that I think rings true, or at least for me. I can't explain to this entirely, but I can give you a little snapshot here and a snapshot there. But you heard earlier today from Adam Housley when he was talking to some people along those boats. I get the impression that some of these people think the water level is going to drop any day, or perhaps even any hour for that matter. And if that's the case, they want to stay behind and clean up what is left behind. But based on everything we're learning from the Corps of Engineers and from FEMA here and the Army, this is a project that is weeks away at a minimum. And after seeing it firsthand several hours ago, I concur with that. The other thing, Paige, that strikes me in flying over New Orleans is this. Who can live there now? Once the water goes down, you literally see the chemicals and the gas and the oil floating in the water from above. And it's been that way for 7 days and counting.
Are any of these people, Bill, talking about what is next? Of course, we want to let our viewers know that the first batch of people to arrive in Arizona, 150 evacuees have been shipped to Arizona. They landed in Phoenix just a short while ago. And yet your heart goes out to these people. Okay, they're in Phoenix. They're going to get a hot meal. They're going to get some medical attention. They're going to get a cot. But what comes next?
Yeah, here's a staggering number for you. I read today that there is one report that indicates more than 200,000 could be in Texas alone. This was touched on yesterday by the Department of Homeland Security, and this is how they looked at it. They say we want to look forward through the forward windshield and down the road to how they can help these people. But you're talking about jobs here, Paige. You're talking about prescriptions still, medicine, health insurance, safety and security for the families. There's also a new push in Baton Rouge as well. Yes, schools, indeed. That's not even counting the infrastructure for what's left behind. An infrastructure, by the way, that is not suitable for anybody to go back and live at this point. And the other factor, well, I'll just relay this to you. The word in Baton Rouge today is that on a grassroots effort, and I truly think in the end, many weeks from now or even months from now, I think this may be the story that you find for these evacuees. At the grassroots level, they're looking to local parishes and local churches to try and take 500 people here and 600 people there. That way you can get away from these massive centers, like in Baton Rouge, across down the convention center, where there were 6,000 strong. At LSU, they had 3,000 this time yesterday afternoon. I haven't been there today. I can't tell you if that number's increased, but based on the information we're getting, it's quite likely. So if you can take this group of 6,000 here and 3,000 over here, then parcel them down to smaller groups of 100 here and 100 there. Then you go down to the dozens, and then you start to relocate literally each and every family that needs a new place to live and needs a job and needs a way to provide for their kids who want to go to school and get back to their education. It's staggering, and all hands are on deck, and that's necessary because we need every hand down here in Louisiana, Paige.
And these pictures are staggering as well, Bill, as we continue to take a look at them. Thousands upon thousands of homes. There must be tens of thousands of homes in New Orleans that are completely flooded here, some near the rooftops. The hope has always been that if we could just get those floodwaters out of there, pumped out, and dry up the city, then perhaps people can return home. But these homes may forever be uninhabitable and have to be bulldozed. We're going to be talking very shortly to a scientist who's going to join a team of scientists. They're going to go in after it's all dried up, and they're going to investigate the habitability of these homes, whether, in fact, the biggest problem he anticipates is mold. And it's toxic mold, which means homes will have to simply be bulldozed. And Bill, I know you're not a structural engineer, but this kind of sustained water damage for weeks at a time can undermine the foundation of a structure. And on that basis alone, these would have to be destroyed as well.
I think the point you make, Greg, is very well taken, and that's the reality that people in New Orleans are going to have to face. The question is, you go house to house, right? You check every attic looking for bodies. I mean, that's the story that's starting to develop over the weekend here. But I should point out that a lot of our focus, because the cameras are there, is above the city of New Orleans and the surrounding parishes there. But I mentioned Plaquemine Parish, too. That's about 25 miles downriver, and it goes for another 75 miles out to the mouth of the Mississippi River. There are homes down there, and there are structures down there up and down the river. There's oil refineries that still have standing water all around the place, completely offline. And we, because we physically cannot get there and literally do not have enough crew members to broadcast those pictures, all we can do is describe this to you, that we're seeing a picture from New Orleans, but it's even much bigger than the city of New Orleans. And I tell you, Greg, we were in that Black Hawk helicopter. I'll show you a bit later once we get the tape cut and fed back to you there in New York. I mean, we flew right down that river for 25 minutes and back again, and the same picture never stopped. Homes submerged up and down the Mississippi River, and that's another issue that they're already talking about in these very parishes, about how to go in there and how to take care of things once the water subsides.
And we're looking at churning water right now, Bill. I know you probably don't have a monitor there, but really what that is, I mean, that could simply be a gas line that continues to spew gas. Bill Hemmer, live in Baton Rouge. We're going to be coming back to you lots over the next couple of hours. Bill, thanks.
All right, Greg, thank you.
We're going to keep watching these pictures. We're going to be talking about our other major story, though, in just a few minutes.
Off to the side of the Mississippi River there, submerged in water, and these refineries are completely offline and may be so for quite some time. The parish itself is home to 30,000, Greg, and it literally is split by the river as it travels south right down to the mouth of the mighty Mississippi. We went for miles and miles and miles, and homes were still in the water. The area submerged. We landed in our Black Hawk on top of a levee between the Mississippi River on one side and the flooded plain on the other. We landed there with Brigadier General Hunt Downer from the Louisiana National Guard. Here's the general.
We literally flew for half an hour up and down the Mississippi River, and this is the scene that we see over and over and over.
And what will have to happen, rescue, as the water recedes, maybe the road will become impassable, and then rescuers will start going to those houses and check each one to make sure there's nobody in there.
When do you have any idea when a process like that can begin?
It's beginning, but in the higher areas. As you got to work down, because here it's boat. Now they'll come down working grid coordinates with airboats, because that'll get in where it's shallow, where it's deep. We're probably the first people since the hurricane to be down this way, or at least to land here.
This is a levee.
Levee.
This was designed to keep the water out.
Yes, sir.
And what happened when the surge came from the storm, it just completely topped this levee and submerged this place.
It just happens the way it is here. If you can look, it's kind of the grass is peeled back on one side where it was topped. So it came over, obviously, with some force or some current.
Do you know if anyone has been able to get down here and look for people?
Yes, they have.
When did that start then?
Oh, immediately. As the storm went out.
Because we haven't seen anyone in the flight over here.
Well, this parish was pretty much about 90–95% evacuated. It had a good response.
Rob, I don't know if you can look at past this here, but this home is just one of hundreds and hundreds that we have seen. Power lines down. This was obviously a road at some point. Yes. No litter zone, speed limit 35.
Speed limit 35. Another road, speed limit 15, so a street off of this main road. I mean, listen to it. You don't hear anything. Notice what's even absent? The chirp of the birds. Everything's gone.
And we talk about the National Guard, some 40 states now converging here on New Orleans and Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and very soon they will be given the task and the duty. Each unit going out to individual parishes throughout the state in the southeastern part of it, Greg, with the task, once that water goes low, to go through these homes and look for what they hope will not be human bodies found inside. That's a job that will begin at some point. Perhaps it's weeks away, maybe more than a month away, but that job awaits here in Louisiana. Greg?
Bill Hemmer reporting live in Baton Rouge. Bill, thanks very much.
Sure. And of course, stay with us as we continue our coverage of the
casino ship is going to have to be completely cut to pieces and dismantled. You can see the ceiling is caving in. The slot machines are a broken mess. Take a look down here. It's a little dark in here, but you can see chairs that gamblers would sit on for the slots. They're just jumbled all over the place. The ceiling, the glass ceiling is collapsing. And we'll come back this way. The floor is a real mess, too. It's waterlogged in here. This ship, which is very large and very heavy, was picked up by the storm surge several hundred yards out in the Gulf and carried this way. And the owner told me that the bottom of the hull of the barge has holes punched in it where it came down on pilings. And it landed here. Other casino boats have landed up and down Highway 90, some on the highway, some across the highway. And we'll give you a look through the ship's wall here out to the shipping yard. And you can see just how far this thing actually did move. There's also there was a chicken processing plant out there that had a lot of chickens in it. I don't know how many, thousands, but they're rotting in the sun now. And the Army brought out a bulldozer to clean them up because it's a health hazard. A lot of health hazards out here. But again, this particular boat, the owner told me he had his best year last year. The Gulf Coast was booming. His business was booming. And now it's bust. Look at the ceiling back there. He has to cut this whole thing up into pieces and haul it off, but he swears, Brian, that he's going to rebuild his business. He swears that he'll get another casino going here as soon as possible. But, you know, a lot of the casino owners had complained for years that Mississippi's laws were antiquated. They require that every casino touch the waters of the Mississippi River or the Gulf of Mexico, and that created a lot of problems for these casino owners because they had to build right on the water. And as we found out after this hurricane, that's just not a good idea when a big storm rolls in. So either you don't have casinos or you have land-based casinos, which is what they want. This place is a mess. It's going to be destroyed along with numerous others in this area. But, of course, the biggest issue, Brian, is not the casinos, but the lives that were lost in this storm, and the search for bodies here along the Gulf Coast continues. It's a grim process, especially in this heat, but it's ongoing, Brian.
All right, Rick Leventhal, I want to ask you to stand by, if you could, just a moment, Rick, while we continue to do some other interviews. Go ahead, Catherine.
We're going to bring in Major Dalton Cunningham. He's the Salvation Army's divisional commander for Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Major Dalton, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Good, thank you. The way the story seems to be evolving today is that the inn is full. The shelters are full. Texas, over 245,000 people
still trapped in their homes in New Orleans. One of them called our newsroom earlier. We got her message to our own Geraldo Rivera, and he joined us now with the rescued women live from New Orleans. Geraldo, You are on air. We're looking at you, and we're looking at Florida, and we're looking at Dusty. Wonderful story. Tell us.
Well, Florida, first of all, how do you feel to be on the verge of flying out of here?
I feel great. It's really great to be going out.
You know how many people have been worried about you?
No, I have no idea. I know a few have.
But everyone called and they told us about you and been looking for you, and I just want you to know that so many people feel good to see you right now. You know, your house had all that water in front of it. What have you been doing since the hurricane hit?
Pretty much surviving, you know. I was very fortunate. The water was in the house. Of course, I didn't have electricity or running water, but I had pots and buckets filled with water, and I had plenty of drinking water and canned foods, and I had enough dog food and water for Dusty, so I feel we were very fortunate. My heart goes out to those ones that were stranded on the bridge and at the Superdome and the Convention Center that didn't have food and water for days. But I was fortunate I did.
But how did you, I know you had soup, but how did you heat the soup? Did you heat it?
I didn't heat it. I ate it out of the can. Out the can.
Oh, Jon Snow, is it? I forgot John's station call letters.
Jon Snow?
WVUE. Jon Snow put us in touch with you.
Jon Snell.
And he was the one that got the call. Jon Snell got the call. And thanks to him, we got to you. And now, are there people you want to say hello to right now?
Yeah, I'd like to say hello to Norma and her family, and to Charlene and her family, and to Mike Foley and his family.
And so what do you think the future holds?
I have no idea.
But we're happy that you're safe.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be safe.
Okay, there's a shot of you getting on the boat. Your ticket out of here through that murky, mucky water. But Florida is going to safety right now. We're pleased and proud to be part of the rescue, honey.
Well, y'all wonderful, all of you. Just great, just wonderful.
Okay, sweetheart.
Yeah, thank you.
We may have we lose Geraldo there. Geraldo,
back to you, Derek.
Yeah, and also Dusty's okay too, which is good to see. Which is one of the reasons that
Dusty's fine.
All right, Dusty is her 15-year-old dog, and one of the reasons Florida stayed behind. Geraldo to the rescue. I'm sure not the first time today. Thanks, Geraldo.
It's been a busy day. Okay.
All right, Gulfport, Mississippi was slammed by the center of Hurricane Katrina. Now people there are dealing with disease, destruction, and rotting food. Fox News correspondent Rick Leventhal is in Gulfport with more on the situation there. Rick, has it gotten any better?
No, it's in some ways a little worse, Derry. We just got a warning from the local police, actually Charleston police, who are from South Carolina, who are here to help out the local police, that they're fearing that there may be chemical issues, environmental hazards here along Highway 90 in Gulfport. You can see it's almost deserted. Anyone who's here either has a permit from the mayor's office or has been told to get out. There's also a curfew in effect that went into effect about 30 minutes ago. So it's not only deserted, but as we already knew, very dangerous, but perhaps more dangerous because of the issues, the stuff that came from this shipyard that was just blown around and distributed all over this area, including tractor-trailer rigs up and down the highway there. There are rotting chickens that were from a chicken processing plant down on that pier that are all over the place. They're trying to clean those up. And, of course, we know that there are bodies as well. There are problems with the water, too. We heard about a shelter here that had to close down and move 400 people because 40 of them got sick because they used the water in the shelter. There is a perimeter that's been set up. You may be able to make out some National Guard troops down there. There are MPs, military police down the road that have set up barricades and aren't letting anyone pass the railroad tracks here in Gulfport. But they were there earlier today as well because they want to keep the sightseers out and let the cleanup crews do their job. There's another Humvee rolling around. We've got a lot of National Guard not just driving through but flying over in military choppers. And earlier today in Biloxi, just up the coast a bit, a couple of hovercraft actually came up on the beach piloted by U.S. Marines, and the Marines bringing in troops, they're bringing in bulldozers, they're bringing in heavy equipment and water and other humanitarian aid as well. So the relief is coming, but the cleanup and the search for bodies continues, and it's a grim task and it's a grim story. But this part of Mississippi is really in trouble, and there are community after community along the Gulf Coast here, Derry and Bob, that have been torn apart, flattened in many cases by this storm, and the cleanup is a monstrous task.
All right, Rick, thanks for that.